24th October is the International Day of Climate Change. For next half hour, we will bring you the special report Apocalypse Now to understand what it means to us individually, from the rise of temperatures to floods that wreak havoc in our lives. Climate change is a reality and not big talk of the uber rich. Recently, Afghanistan, India and Pakistan were among 11 countries singled out by the US intelligence agencies as being, quote, highly vulnerable, unquote, in terms of their ability to prepare for and respond to environmental and societal crises caused by climate change. Here's a report from Pakistan's Indus River Delta.
Travelling across the waters of Indus River in Pakistan, Asghar Ali Khatti is revisiting his home. 10 years ago, the island on the Indus River Delta area had a population of around 12,000. Now, only 400 to 500 people remain. There are many such islands near the Thatta and Badin that people have been forced to leave due to rising sea level. The islands are also highly vulnerable to tropical cyclones such as Gulab, which developed in the Arabian Sea in late September. On Karo Chand, there is no reliable drinking water supply and no health or education facilities. Workers used to build embankments to keep the seawater away, but those left behind have no means to continue that work. Mehman Dawood still lives on the island. Experts say the flow of water downstream has decreased significantly over the past 5 decades with the construction of dams and a report published last month by the World Bank found climate change could push more than 200 million people to leave their homes in the next 3 decades and create migration hotspots like Karo Chand in Pakistan's Thatta, unless urgent action is taken to reduce global emissions and bridge the development gap.
The rise in temperature meant melting glaciers. Himalayan nation Nepal faces the brunt of this hard every monsoon year after year. Grappling with the pandemic, the country was hit hard this year by the prolonged monsoon-induced flash floods and landslides. Here's a report from Nepal.
The week-long post-monsoon downpour wreaked havoc in Nepal. More than 100 died and close to 50 people are still missing in the Himalayan nation in the flash floods and landslide. Persistent heavy rain hampered rescue efforts. A majority of the deaths occurred in the country's eastern and western regions. The government announced relief for the flood-affected region.
को घटनामा परि कुनै परिवारको मृत्यु भएमा रु 2 लाखको दरले सोही परिवारमा अन्य व्यक्तिको समेत मृत्यु भएमा प्रति व्यक्ति थप रु 1 लाखको दरले एक द्वार नीतिबाट राहत उपलब्ध गराउने, विपदबाट घर बाल आवास नष्ट भएका वा खाद्यान्न बाली तथा जग्गा जमिन वा पसलको व्यवसाय समेत नोक्सानी भई तत्काल गुजाराका लागि खाद्यान्न समेत नभएका वा दुवै अवस्थामा पीडित परिवारलाई प्रति व्यक्ति 5 जनासम्म सदस्य भएको परिवार भए रु 15,000 र 5 जना भन्दा बढी सदस्य भएको परिवार भए रु 20,000 को दरले तत्काल नगद सहायता उपलब्ध गराउने.
Rice paddy crops remain submerged or washed away. Flooded rivers swept away bridges, roads and houses. The natural disaster hit 20 districts of Nepal. Flash floods and landslides are common in Nepal during the monsoon season that normally lasts from mid-June through September every year. The beginning of the season this year too caused deaths and damages due to landslides and flash floods. In June, heavy rain across Nepal killed 11 people, including 1 Indian and 2 Chinese workers at a development project. 25 people were missing. Experts say higher temperatures have meant lesser snow in the Himalayas. This, coupled with heavy rains, is pushing large volumes of water downstream, triggering flash floods in Nepal and northern Gangetic belt in India.
Indian monsoons too caused devastation. The northern Gangetic belt has been for the past few months grappling with its impact. Recently, the hill state of Uttarakhand was worst affected. Rains have now stopped, but the deluge over the last few days has left piles of debris and ruins. The NDRF is now clearing the areas. Here's a ground report.
Deluge, damage, destruction. And now the hill state of Uttarakhand wears a calm as it stands on the piles of ruins. Uprooted trees, destroyed property and tons of debris are being cleared as the rains stop. The flood fury has left several parts of the state waterlogged and businesses shut. The mayhem unleashed by the unprecedented rains still scares people.
6 से 9 बजे तक फिर पानी का लेवल स्तर इतनी तेजी से बढ़ा कि हमें अपनी दुकानें बंद करना ही मुश्किल हो गया। कुछ का सामान निकल पाया, कुछ का बिल्कुल ही नहीं निकल पाया है। सारा सामान दुकानों में ऐसे ही बंद पड़ा है, सारा सामान खराब हो गया है।
Their losses are immeasurable. Still in shock, the victims cannot even list the belongings they could not save before all of that was swept away.
जब तक हमने यहाँ आकर के लोगों को सूचना दी, कुछ सामान निकल पाया दुकानों से, कुछ नहीं निकल पाया। बहुत बड़ा नुकसान लोगों का हुआ है यहाँ।
Some of the victims are worried if they would find their villages standing when they go back.
सन 2010 में भी पानी आया था, लेकिन इतना नहीं आया था।
तब भी इतना नहीं आया।
हाँ, इस बार काफी पानी है। सामान कुछ नहीं निकाल पाए हैं। काफी करोड़ों का नुकसान हुआ है दुकानदारों को।
A bit of good news, the Met Department forecasts that there will be no rains in the state in the coming days.
जो वेदर एक्टिविटी है अब 8 से 10 दिन कुछ भी अब नहीं है। तो जो लोग आना चाहते हैं उत्तराखंड रास्तों वगैरह को देख के पूछ के तो वो बिल्कुल आ सकते हैं।
Life has come to a standstill for those who stay in the state of Uttarakhand. Torrential rains have wreaked havoc in the state and most parts of the state have now submerged because of floods. The shops are shut and those who were staying in low-lying areas, they have been evacuated. Unfortunately, more than 30 people have lost their lives. The NDRF team at the moment is continuing with the rescue work, but they believe many more have lost their lives and the rescue work will continue for the next 2 to 3 days. This is Aishwarya Paliwal reporting from Ranpur with camera person Parminder Sharma.
Not only the north, down south, the rising sea level and ecological disbalance of Western Ghats has caused another flood fury in Kerala. The death toll due to the devastating floods in the state has reached close to 30. On the ground, rescue operation continues on a war footing. Ashutosh Mishra reports.
After 3 days of flood fury, Kerala is breathing a sigh of relief. The Met Department, which sounded an orange alert for 11 districts, has withdrawn its warning. The let-up in rains comes after several days of death and destruction, unleashed by the receding southwest monsoon. The deluge prompted at least 4 dams to release water as the storage level closed in on the danger mark. In Kottayam, several families marooned in water were evacuated to relief camps. The Sabrimala pilgrimage is suspended temporarily due to floods. Colleges in flood zone are shut till October 25th and Public Service Commission examination is deferred.
This is how the locals with the country-made board are out to help people, those who are in the affected areas, in the low-lying areas, and look at this, how these houses are completely submerged. And if I could say that this is not a drain, neither a river, but a motorable road, which was connecting from the remote areas, the rural, these villages, to the mainland, are now under the water, and the depth could be more than 4 to 5 feet.
The worst of the floods may be over for now, but Kerala needs to remain cautious.
The weather predictor also added that the southwest monsoon will withdraw completely by October 26th. Bureau Report, India Today.
Apocalypse is no more a prediction of oversensitive doomsayers. The world, developed, developing or underdeveloped, all are facing the brunt equally. While the rich nations have better damage control mechanisms in place, the curse of climate change is borne out by the poorer countries to the worst limits. Here's a report.
"2021 so far has been a year of destructive weather and climate events. They had unforeseen impacts on populations. Scientists have been under increasing pressure to determine exactly how climate change drives these events.
We are seeing a rise in climate anxiety. You know, young people now are growing up where their futures are basically being threatened the whole time. It's very unnerving and it's very, anxiety making.
His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, was recently caught on microphone criticizing the global lack of action on climate change.
She made the comments not intending it to be overheard, but I think everybody feels that we want to make sure there's progress, and there's been a lot of progress. Of course, it remains to be seen at COP26 the extent to which the world commits.
Indonesia frequently suffers from floods and landslides, particularly during the rainy season from November to March. The situation is often worsened by the cutting down of forests. Landslides caused by heavy rain in western Indonesia killed 11 and injured 18 in January this year. Also in January, thousands of people were forced to flee their homes as firefighters battled a devastating bushfire that destroyed 86 homes on the outskirts of Perth in Western Australia. Much of the United States was in the grip of bone-chilling weather over the 3-day President's Day holiday weekend in February. A devastating winter storm in Texas caused serious damage to homes and businesses and left millions without power or clean water for days and killed at least 24. In March, 5 days of incessant rain triggered the worst floods in more than half a century in Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, cutting off entire towns and washing away homes, farms and livestock. Parts of South Sudan are experiencing their worst floods in 60 years, and the United Nations is linking the situation to climate change.
As UNHCR, we're seeing this as intensifying effects of climate change. South Sudan has been very prone to cyclical droughts and floods, sometimes happening the same time in a year. And this is nothing but just the effects of a changing climate.
For some areas in Sudan, it is the third straight year of extreme flooding, endangering livelihoods in the world's youngest nation. 24th October is the International Day of Climate Action. It falls a week before the United Nations Climate Change Conference to be held in Glasgow. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will push world leaders to commit to ending reliance on fossil fuels at the upcoming COP26.
International Day of Climate Action was first organized by environmental organization 350.org in 2009 on the 24th of October. It is a day now that acts as a reminder that the clock is ticking and the world needs to correct itself to keep this planet habitable. In about another week, a UN climate summit will commence in United Kingdom's Glasgow. Our foreign affairs editor caught up with the executive vice president of the European Green Deal, Frans Timmermans, for an exclusive conversation. Here's an excerpt from that interview. Listen in.
This is an India Today exclusive. Joining me is the Executive Vice President of the European Green Deal, Mr. Frans Timmermans. He's here in New Delhi ahead of the COP26. Many thanks for joining us here on India Today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me begin with the biggest problem that faces the global community, which is climate change. And you announced a major launch that is €1 million for cooperation between the European Union and the International Solar Alliance. What does that really entail?
Well, that means that we want to make this incredible opportunity of solar power accessible to everyone across the world. Also, people who would initially not have easy access to that because they don't have the finance or they don't have the technology. That is the power of the Solar Alliance, is to make it accessible to everyone, because solar power has the potential to bring energy in places where normally there would be no energy. It has the potential to help women across the developing world to no longer have to go look for timber every day and cook in very unhealthy circumstances, but to use electricity for that. It has the potential to bring education to the remotest areas of the planet. It has the potential to bring communication to everyone, to recharge your mobile phone, etc. So the potential is incredible, but we have to make it happen. And the Solar Alliance is one of those efforts that will make it more accessible to millions and millions of people.
And also it's clean.
It's absolutely clean, absolutely.
Mr. Timmermans, the fact that you're looking at cooperation within the International Solar Alliance, have you identified countries or projects that the European Union is keen to work on?
Well, I think we will all have to decarbonize our economy, which is an incredible challenge. And it's particularly an incredible challenge for countries that are still in the way of developing, in the way of increasing the well-being of their citizens. And we cannot have a transition to a decarbonized economy and then say to people, well, then you have to sort of hold back on your development. We have to make sure that we use this transition to a no-carbon economy also to enhance the potential of people to grow into more wealth, into more well-being. And I believe that is probably humanity's biggest challenge today.
India has been at the forefront of this fight against climate change, but there is a lot of walking the talk that the leadership, the government, state governments really have to do. You're in New Delhi, you've had meetings. What do you think is the way forward? How much has the government done, and how much can India really do? Not just government, but also people.
Well, first of all, I believe we as citizens of the world, we can all change some of our ways to reduce our carbon footprint and to help our planet to recover and to learn to live within planetary boundaries. This is something every human being can contribute to. But of course, those of us who are better off have a bigger responsibility than those who are still in the way of developing. So that is also very true. At the same time, when we have to find, if we have to find a solution for this problem, India will be part of that solution. India will be part of that solution. It is a huge country with incredible potential, with a strong industrial base, with a lot of development still coming, but with the potential to make this transition to a renewable energy economy in a huge way. If I look at, for instance, just one example, the ambition to introduce 450 gigawatts of renewable energy between now and 2030, it's only 9 years away. That is incredible, and the world is watching this in awe and with support. So India is really giving us a couple of examples of what we could do to hand over a better planet to our children and grandchildren.
We've seen in the recent past freaky climate conditions, weather, the calamities that we've seen in the recent past that absolutely spell out the urgency and the need to fight climate change. Your take on how climate change is affecting weather, how it is affecting countries, and how it's affecting harvest, crops, lifestyle, and way of life.
Now the temperature has risen 1.1 degree as compared to pre-industrial levels. Already you see wildfires all across the world. You see the horrible floods you see now in India these days. You've seen tornadoes in Europe. We've never had tornadoes in Europe. You've seen floods in Europe, in my own country, and in Germany and Belgium, unprecedented. You've seen 50 degrees Celsius in northwest Canada. You've seen monsoons lasting twice as long. You've seen harvests go wrong across the world. In Western Europe now, the price of bread is going up because harvests are not yielding the results we are used to. This is with 1.1 degrees. Just imagine what would happen if we let the things go beyond 2 degrees. Then things will be out of control, and there will be too much water in one part, there will be no water in other parts. This will lead to huge migration flows. This will lead to enormous tensions. To put it very bluntly, if we don't change our ways, our children will be waging wars over water and food, and we have the responsibility to prevent that from happening.
We are looking at an apocalypse-like situation if we do not prevent it. COP26 is a summit where leaders are going to come together to pledge what they ought to do. Now, a lot of conversation has moved from net zero, that is a country's responsibility, to global net zero. Do you agree that developed nations ought to do a little more and give leeway to developing nations so they can develop, and the onus and the burden can be carried by developed countries, so the global net zero remains intact?
Well, absolutely. You know, I come from a country that has profited for 200 years from a carbon-based economy. And the downside of that is that we've been creating emissions for 200 years. How can I, with any justification, go to a developing country and say, sorry, you don't get to develop because we messed up and we all suffer? I can't do that. So we need to create the space for human development in developing nations. And how do we do that? By helping the transition there as well, by coming up with the money we've promised, the $100 billion that was promised before, by organizing technology transfers so that countries can develop the renewable energy sectors they need to develop, by helping also investment come to those countries. That is what we need to do. But, you know, at the end of the day, what is also true is this. We cannot go to our children and grandchildren down the line and tell them, well, we didn't do anything because the other guy should have done more. That is not a proposition anyone, whether it's in India or in the Netherlands or in Europe, can take to their children and grandchildren. So we have a collective responsibility, but it is differentiated on the basis of where we are in our economic development.
We all stand guilty before our next generation if we don't act now. Apocalypse now is the reality, and to act green should be our pledge to exonerate ourselves. That's all we have for you in this special edition. News and updates will continue on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned.